Welcome to the Semper AI Digest. I'm Tomas, your AI research lead, always scanning the horizon for what's next.
And I'm Aiva. Together, we keep you sharp, informed, and ahead of the curve.
Let's get into it.
All right, buckle up because today feels like Christmas morning in the AI world. Google just dropped what might be their biggest creative AI suite yet. OpenAI casually announced they solved an 80-year-old math problem, and we're seeing the early glimpses of what personal AGI might actually look like. I'm Tomas.
And I'm Aiva. And honestly, when I saw that math breakthrough this morning, I had to read it 3 times. We're talking about a problem that's stumped mathematicians since 1946, and an AI just figured it out. Not a specialized math system, but a general reasoning model.
Right? It's like watching someone who's never played chess before sit down and beat a grandmaster. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's start with Google because they just unleashed an entire creative arsenal that's making me rethink what's possible in design workflows.
Okay, break this down for me. Google Pics, Google Flow updates, something called Stitch by Google. This feels like they announced 5 products at once.
Think of it like this. Google just built a complete creative studio in the cloud, but instead of buying expensive software and learning complex interfaces, you just talk to it. Google Pics is probably the most immediately useful. It's integrated right into Google Workspace, and you can literally hover over objects and images and move them around, resize them, add text, translate text on the fly.
Wait, hover and click to move objects. That sounds almost too simple.
That's exactly what makes it brilliant. Remember when photo editing meant opening Photoshop, learning layers, mastering the pen tool? Now it's as intuitive as rearranging furniture in a room. But here's where it gets really interesting. This isn't just a standalone tool. It's built into Workspace, which means it's designed for the way people actually work.
That integration piece is huge. I mean, how many times have you been in a presentation and thought, I need to quickly edit this image, but didn't want to leave your workflow?
Exactly. And that philosophy carries through to everything they announced. Google Flow got some major updates that honestly sound like science fiction. They're now using Gemini Omni Flash, and there's something called Google Flow Agent that can reason through complex multi-step creative tasks.
Okay, what does that actually mean, though? Reasoning through creative tasks sounds like marketing speak.
Fair point. From what they're describing, imagine you want to create an animated sequence for a video. Instead of you having to figure out the 20 different steps, creating keyframes, adjusting timing, adding effects, the agent can plan that entire workflow and execute it step by step. It's like having a creative director that also happens to be a technical expert.
That's actually pretty compelling. And this vibe coding thing for custom tools?
Oh, this is where it gets fun. You can apparently create custom tools just by describing the vibe or feeling you want. Want a tool that creates vintage film grain effects? Or something that layers text with a cyberpunk aesthetic? You just describe it and the system builds the tool for you.
I'm curious how well that actually works in practice. The gap between describe what you want and get a tool that actually does it well can be pretty wide.
True, and that's where Google's partnership approach is smart. They specifically mention working with artists, designers, and builders to solve real problems in their workflows. That suggests they're not just throwing AI at creative tools and hoping it sticks, they're actually talking to people who do this work professionally.
Right, and speaking of professional workflows, the Stitch by Google thing sounds like it could be a game changer for developers. Text or voice prompts to edit layouts in real time, then export straight to code.
This is where Google might be making a really strategic play. Think about the friction in design to development handoffs. Designers create mockups, developers try to interpret them, there's back and forth about spacing and colors and interactions. If you can design with natural language and get actual code out the other end,
You're basically eliminating one of the most painful parts of product development. Although I do wonder about code quality. Getting functional code is one thing, getting maintainable, efficient code is another.
absolutely. But even if the code needs cleanup, having a starting point that actually reflects the design intent could save weeks of development time. And then there's Google Flow Music, which is getting some wild updates.
Okay, I saw they mentioned editing songs section by section and creating music videos. That feels like they're going after the entire creative production pipeline.
It really does. The section-by-section editing is fascinating because that's how professional producers actually work. You don't just generate a whole song and hope it's perfect. You craft verses, choruses, bridges separately and then bring them together. And the fact that they can now create music videos using Gemini Omni Flash suggests we're looking at true multimodal creativity.
What strikes me about all of this is how it represents a shift from AI as a tool to AI as a creative partner. These aren't just automation features, they're systems that can understand creative intent and help execute it.
Exactly. And that brings us to our next big story, which is Sam Altman basically laying out OpenAI's vision for what happens when this technology gets really good. He posted about 3 things that excite him most: AGI accelerating research, AGI accelerating companies, and personal AGI accelerating everyone.
I saw that post, and while the first two feel like natural extensions of what we're already seeing, that third one, personal AGI, that's the one that really makes me think.
Right? AGI for research, we can picture that. AGI helping companies be more efficient? Sure. But personal AGI? What does that even look like day to day?
I think it's the difference between having a really smart assistant and having a thinking partner. Like, instead of set a reminder for my meeting, it's help me think through this career decision or work with me to plan a creative project over the next 6 months.
And Altman mentioned they announced something called the unit distance result, and that they're investing $2 million in OpenAI credits into every Y Combinator company. But then he said they need to increase efforts on that third category, personal AGI.
Which suggests they think the infrastructure for business and research use cases is getting there, but the personal applications still need work. That makes sense, actually. Business use cases are often more defined, with clearer success metrics.
And speaking of that unit distance result, we need to talk about what might be the biggest technical breakthrough in this entire episode. OpenAI just announced they solved the planar unit distance problem.
Okay, for people who didn't major in math, what exactly is this problem?
Picture this. You have a bunch of points on a flat plane, and some of them are exactly 1 unit apart from each other. The question is, what's the maximum number of points you can have where each point is exactly 1 unit away from at least one other point, but no 2 points that aren't supposed to be connected are exactly 1 unit apart?
So it's like a constraint satisfaction problem, but in geometric space?
Exactly. And Paul Erdős first posed this in 1946. For almost 80 years, mathematicians have been working on it. The best solutions have gotten incrementally better, but it's been one of those problems that just seemed stuck.
And OpenAI's model just solved it? Not a specialized math system, but a general reasoning model?
That's the wild part. According to their post, this came from a general-purpose reasoning model, not something built specifically for math problems. It's like using a Swiss Army knife to perform surgery and having it work better than specialized surgical tools.
What does that tell us about where these systems are heading?
OpenAI says it best in their follow-up. These systems are becoming capable of holding together long, difficult chains of reasoning, connecting ideas across distant fields, and surfacing paths researchers might not have explored. It's not just about having access to information anymore. It's about making connections that humans might miss.
Although they were careful to note that this doesn't replace human judgment. Expertise becomes more valuable, not less.
Right, and that's important. The AI can help search, suggest, and verify, but people still choose the problems that matter, interpret results, decide what questions to pursue next. It's augmentation, not replacement.
But let's be honest, if a general reasoning model can solve an 80-year-old math problem, what other breakthrough problems might be within reach? Climate modeling, drug discovery, material science?
That's exactly what OpenAI is betting on. They specifically mention biology, physics, engineering, and medicine as areas where these reasoning capabilities could accelerate work. And actually, speaking of which, Google's making a big play in that exact space.
Right, Gemini for science. What's the story there?
Google's building Gemini specifically for scientific research, and they're doing it in partnership with over 100 institutions. Their trusted tester community ranges from PhD students to Nobel laureates, which suggests they're really serious about getting this right.
That's smart positioning. Science is an area where you can't just throw AI at problems and hope for the best. You need rigor, you need validation, you need people who understand the domain deeply.
Exactly. And they're also launching something called Science Skills, which integrates insights from over 30 major life science models and databases with agentic platforms. The promise is that researchers can perform complex manual workflows in minutes instead of days or weeks.
Okay, but what does that actually look like in practice? Because complex workflows in minutes could mean a lot of things.
Think about drug discovery. Traditionally, you might spend weeks gathering data from different databases, running preliminary analyses, identifying potential compounds, checking for known interactions. If an agent can orchestrate all of that automatically and present you with a curated analysis,
You're essentially automating the grunt work so researchers can focus on the creative and interpretive aspects. That could genuinely accelerate scientific progress.
and it fits with this broader theme we're seeing. AI systems that don't just answer questions, but actively help with complex, multi-step reasoning and planning.
Speaking of which, I noticed Google DeepMind mentioned they're partnering with leading organizations to validate the Gemini 3.5 series within their own environments. That feels significant.
It really does. Instead of just releasing models and hoping enterprises figure out how to use them, they're working directly with organizations to prove value in real-world settings. That's a much more mature go-to-market approach.
And it probably gives them much better feedback about what actually matters versus what sounds impressive in demos.
Exactly. All right, let's shift gears and talk about some of the other developments that caught our attention. Gemini's Daily Brief feature is now available to all Google AI Plus, Pro, and Ultra subscribers over 18 in the US.
What's interesting about Daily Brief is that it represents this idea of proactive AI. Instead of you having to ask for information, the system anticipates what you might need to know.
It's like having a really good executive assistant who reads everything overnight and gives you a personalized briefing in the morning. Although I'm curious how they handle the personalization without being creepy about data usage.
Right, there's definitely a balance there. And speaking of personalization, Claude's been pushing their Claude Design feature, asking users what they're making with it.
That's smart community engagement. Instead of just announcing features, they're creating conversation around what people are actually building. It gives them product insights and creates social proof at the same time.
And it suggests Claude Design is getting real traction if they're confident enough to ask users to share their creations publicly.
True. You know what's interesting to think about is how all these developments connect. We've got Google building comprehensive creative suites, OpenAI solving complex reasoning problems, specialized scientific tools emerging.
It feels like we're watching the emergence of AI systems that can genuinely partner with humans on complex, creative, intellectual work, not just answer questions or automate simple tasks, but actually contribute to the thinking process.
And what's fascinating is how quickly this is happening. The planar unit distance problem was unsolved for 80 years, and now it's done. How many other impossible problems are about to become possible?
Although I think we need to be thoughtful about what this means for how people learn and develop expertise. If AI can solve complex problems, how do we ensure humans still develop the deep understanding needed to know which problems to solve and how to interpret the results?
That's a really important point. OpenAI mentioned that expertise becomes more valuable, not less, but that requires people to actually develop expertise in the first place.
Right. There's this balance between leveraging AI to accelerate learning and ensuring it doesn't become a crutch that prevents deep understanding.
It reminds me of GPS navigation, incredibly useful, but if you only ever follow turn-by-turn directions, you never develop spatial reasoning or the ability to navigate when the technology fails.
Exactly. But when used thoughtfully, these tools could actually help people learn faster by handling routine tasks and letting them focus on higher-level concepts.
And that might be the key, using AI to compress the time to competence rather than replacing competence entirely.
Speaking of competence, one thing I've noticed is how much more sophisticated the conversation around AI deployment has gotten. Google's approach with Gemini for Science, working with 100+ institutions, involving Nobel laureates, that's a far cry from move fast and break things.
It really is. The industry seems to be maturing past the point of just building cool demos and toward building systems that can handle real-world complexity and scrutiny.
Which is probably necessary as these systems become more powerful. The stakes get higher when AI can actually solve previously unsolvable problems.
Absolutely. And I think that's what makes today's announcement so significant. We're not just seeing incremental improvements anymore. We're seeing qualitative leaps in capabilities across multiple domains simultaneously.
The question is whether society can adapt quickly enough to make good use of these capabilities. Because having powerful tools is one thing, having the wisdom to use them well is another.
That's the real challenge, isn't it? Technical progress is accelerating, but human institutions, education systems, ethical frameworks, those change much more slowly.
Which is why I actually appreciate approaches like Google's partnership model with scientists and artists. Instead of just building in isolation and throwing technology over the wall, they're working with domain experts to understand real needs and constraints.
And is probably why Sam Altman identified personal AGI as the area that needs more focus. Business and research applications have existing frameworks and expertise to draw on. Personal applications? That's much murkier territory.
Right. When AI becomes truly personal, the questions get much more complex. Not just, can it solve this technical problem, but how do I want this to influence my thinking, my creativity, my decision-making?
And those aren't questions with universal answers. What makes a good personal AGI assistant for you might be completely different from what works for me.
Which brings us back to that theme of AI as a thinking partner rather than just a tool. Partners need to understand context, preferences, values, not just technical requirements.
Exactly. And I think that's what makes this moment so interesting. We're moving from what can AI do to how should AI do it. The capability questions are getting answered. Now come the harder questions about implementation and integration.
Well, and that's probably a good place to wrap up today's episode. We've covered a lot of ground, from Google's Creative Suite to OpenAI's math breakthrough to the broader questions about how these systems integrate into real work and life.
The pace of development is honestly breathtaking. Between the time we started recording this episode and when our listeners hear it, there will probably be 3 more major announcements.
Which is why staying informed matters so much. These aren't just technical curiosities anymore. They're tools and capabilities that are reshaping how creative work, scientific research, and problem-solving happen.
If today's episode got you thinking about the possibilities, share it with someone who would appreciate diving into these ideas with you, and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what's coming next.
Because if today taught us anything, it's that the impossible problems of yesterday are becoming the solved problems of today. Thanks for listening to Semper AI Digest.
We'll see you next time.